Well, then I'll call the Tuesday, August 18, 2020 Urbandale City Council meeting to order and ask Nicole to take a roll call, please.
Blake?
Here.
Carberry Montgomery?
Here.
Obrecht?
Here.
Hoagie?
Here.
Russell?
Here.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. Welcome, everybody. I'll ask for a motion to approve the agenda. Is there a motion in a second?
So moved.
This is Pogie. I'll second it.
All right, motion by Carberry Montgomery, second by Pogie. Carberry Montgomery? Oh, I didn't hear you there, Bridget.
Yes, I was too quick on muting.
Oh, thank you. Pogie?
Yes.
Blake?
Yes.
Obrecht?
Yes.
Russell?
Yes.
Excellent, thank you.
All right, thank you. Then moving on to item 3 is our regular agenda items for the Lunch and Learn. And to start off is the discussion of the CIP program, and I'll turn it over to AJ. AJ?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of council. Thank you for your time this morning. The capital improvements program timeframe, this time of year, particularly for the new council members, and we have traditionally provided an overview of the process and the timeframe for the development and presentation of the capital improvement program for not only the Citizen Review Committee, but ultimately for the City Council. We do that for a number of reasons. We have already begun internally with the directors looking at the current CIP, updating that document as to the next projects that are traditionally in line as we have configured the CIP, and then to identify new programs that need to be considered for our internal review, but also then to present for the CIP committee and ultimately to the council. The process, and at some point I'll give a very quick overview, but then I'm going to turn it over to Nikki Lamb, our finance director, who's in charge of the process. But the process involves a number of different steps. And part of that discussion we have today is kind of a confirmation of the existing CIP plan, the process we go through internally, but also we look at the financial implications of developing the plan as it relates to our anticipated tax rate. And that in the discussion that Nikki will hit on briefly as well is what impact the local option sales tax will have based on the direction we received from council during our budget discussions earlier this year, and what we know to date moving forward associated with the local option sales tax. And then we look at, again, more process related issues and timing related issues. We kind of give you a heads up, and this is all at times subject to change based on availability of the committee, other issues that may present itself that we don't have the crystal ball to tell you that this is going to be a game changer event that may alter our dates and presentations. So again, our traditionally at this point in time, we do get the council on the lunch and learn and say, this is how we would like to proceed in order for this all to fit into a schedule, which historically we try to maintain some historic perspective so we know when certain things will fall together for not only staff review, but the presentations, publications, a period of digesting it all by the council, and then ultimately the final public hearing and adoption by the city council come January of 2021. We have a fairly, and I think many of you know this, that we have a fairly tried and true system that, and I'd like to say comparatively to other communities, particularly communities our size, we have a very robust system of development, review, and presentation of our CIP document. It's linked to a whole host of moving parts, mostly our financial capacity to do different projects and how that capacity relates to outside funding, such as now the introduction of the local option sales tax, state or federal funding, particularly for road projects, and of course the debt service levy, which we have in place, which is the levy that supports, our capacity or our willingness to borrow a certain level of dollars from the marketplace to pay for these capital projects. Earlier this season, I sent out an email to kind of to make sure that our process, particularly the utilization of the CIP committee, was still agreeable by council. There was some limited discussion last year in late November through December about process. And as I just mentioned, our process, we believe from a staff level, is fairly tried and true, but also given the realistic and obvious limitations of the size of our staff, and now with the COVID related issues, our time frames that we put things together are fairly fixed in the sense that to make all of this work within having a final adoption in January of 21, as we have with the Januaries of the previous years, this really is a time frame that, again, I don't want to sound too rigid, but really needs to stay in place so we can get this all done in conjunction with, and I will speak on behalf of the finance department with their staff, getting through audit, getting through CIP, getting through budget preparation, and then doing their normal daily work with the staff that we have. So I appreciate that this at times presents a lot of information to be absorbed by council in a time frame at the end of the year where there's typically a lot of things going on, but also as a realistic observation over the years I've been here is that this is a very streamlined process given the resources that we have. So I do want to kind of set that table, if you will. So again, our discussion today, and I'll turn it over to Nikki here in a minute, that will lead us through getting us to that point of that discussion with council in January, but also setting some of the financial parameters that we're going to work within in some of those explanations. So with that, Mr. Mayor, I would ask our finance director, Nikki Lamb, to take it from here and to present the information she's prepared.
All right.
Okay. Can you all see my screen now? Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. So this was attached to the agenda. This is the schedule that we've penciled out pending approval by everybody. Matches pretty similarly to what we did last year, assuming the committee meetings. The one change that we made this year is we've always booked out a third CIP committee meeting. We have, in the last 10 years, have not gone on to that third one. So we decided just to book the two the way they fall this year, because that third one would have to be the week of Thanksgiving. So we're just hoping to be able to get through it in two meetings instead of bothering with the third one, because we just typically don't need it. The time, if you recall last year, we switched from morning time to an evening meeting. That seems to be easier and works better for staff. Selfishly, I am not a morning person, so those 7 a.m. meetings are a fave for me as well. So those 5:45, so we figure that we should be able to be done by 8 o'clock each of those nights. So November 16th and November 19th are the committee meetings. And this just kind of lays out the next pieces of it. We would go to the public hearing for the CIP committee's public hearing version on December 3rd, and then that will come to council. You would have it by December 15th, and then have a month, give or take a month, to review it. We go through our publication notices, and then a public meeting again at the full council for adoption on January 12th. That leads us right into the, we have to set that ahead of time because I derive the budget numbers for our debt service levy and how we're going to address that in the budget process. And we start that in early January, start your work sessions at the end of January. So it all kind of stair steps down into that process, just as AJ mentioned. So does anybody have any questions on that related to committee? Obviously, the 2 council members are on that committee, which I believe are yet to be appointed. But we do encourage, if council members want, especially now that these would probably be available via WebEx as well, to listen in on those, because a lot more detail, as you all know, that have been through the process goes through every single page of the CIP document with the committee level. And then you all have it to read and absorb, but if you actually want to see it, see a map of it, all that fun stuff, that is actually part of the committee work itself. So is there any questions on the schedule as laid out, or any concerns about that? Hearing none. Really, I guess the pieces that AJ hit on, the other thing I was just going to pop up our screen. I really was hoping to be able to give you some local option sales tax numbers today. Those were legally, it's supposed to be released to the cities, and we are supposed to have it by August 15th, and magically it's the 18th, and it still did not come in the mail today because they only mail it to us, which is lovely. So I don't have the numbers yet. Our estimates for this new year should be coming. I assumed it would be in my hands for today. I apologize. But we'll release those as soon as we've got them. But I guess I just want to lay out, this is the updated, you all saw this last year before we paid off bonds. Just as kind of a reminder, this is still just the plan that's been laid out. The CIP document doesn't really focus on the process of paying off the debt and the loss and how you want to use that. CIP is still going to be bonded for. We will still issue debt for the projects that are laid out in the CIP. So really that decision about whether we're going to pay off bonds or if you want to do something different with the local option sales tax, that's a budget decision, not a CIP decision per se. So I just want to give you some reassurance to that, is by starting the CIP process, we go through that entire thing. That's not forcing you to do any specific direction on loss, because we're not cash flowing projects for that with the lost funds, but you could always decide to still do that. So those are really 2 separate decisions. The CIP is still built around the $1.64 debt service levy. That reflects the 36 cents that we called and paid off bonds in June of 2020. So those bonds are already released. This was an updated version of, if you look down here at the bottom, I'm sorry, this is probably pretty small on your screen. The green columns are the 3 bonds that are at this time, I guess, recommended that we should be able to call and pay off with the cash on hand that we have in June of 2021. As we get through the budget process in winter 21 in January, February there, we'll have an update of how much cash do we have on hand, what do you want to do with that, do we want to pay off any or all of those bonds based on that. So this is still laying out similar schedule to what we did. We were, the red column is what we already paid off, so those 2 are gone, and that resulted in the 36-cent debt service reduction of property taxes that we have in place for this year. So the CIP is still built around the fact that I will still issue bonds for the normal amount, and then we're doing the payoff behind it to use the property tax reduction. So those are 2 separate things, and I just wanted to kind of remind you of that. This is still just the projection that we're showing of what you could do with those funds if we want to. But CIP is built around that. Just like I'm looking at my notes, anything else? The 5:45 start time, that was different. And then no third meeting. So that's the layout that I had for you. This document, I can send that out to you if you want it. Obviously, it's a planning document that we will go through in depth during budget time. Once I actually have the local option sales tax number, I'll be able to confirm if this target of 6.4 million, we should still be on par for doing that. But we don't know until we get information from the state. They are not very transparent and timely about releasing any type of revenue numbers for sales tax. The cities and counties don't know ahead of time. The state has to release those. So I don't have a good answer for you. What does it look like we're going to be at? Because I don't have them yet. But any questions on that?
Nikki, I would like it if you would send this out. I realize
Sure.
It's a planning document now, but it's a good review as well.
Yep.
Thanks.
Any other questions?
Nikki, you may want to hit on the process that they've shared with you from the Department of Revenue as far as they're no longer clawback.
Yes, so obviously there's a lot of concern about what happens with everything going online and businesses shutting down and what does sales tax actually look like. Um, the one thing that they did reassure us back in May when they were trying to determine if they were going to revise the rest of this current fiscal year, well, I guess at the time, fiscal 20, to finish out those payments. And they did say so. So the process goes through and it shuts the fiscal year for the state is September 30th. So they do a true up in October. And if you're over or under based on actual sales tax receipts, they will either take it back from you or give you the rest of it. So last year we had, I don't know, like a $90,000 payment that we got from Dallas County on the true up. So the concern is are they overpaying us because, they give us this estimate a year ahead of time and they pay that same amount all year long. So we literally get a sheet of paper from them, which I was supposed to have today, to tell us exactly what my payments will be. And it's estimated at like 90% of what the state estimate is for collections. So if in October, they have assured us that they will not have the worst case scenario of, oh, by the way, we overpaid you and you owe us $500,000 back. They will not do that because of the cash flow situation. They're going to just allocate that over the remainder of the year's payments. So we will not have the clawback provision that those of us that were around a long time. I know AJ had that horror story of in Eastern Iowa, somebody was overpaid by 300 and they just took it out, $300,000, took it back from them the next month. So they have assured us that they're not going to do that. They will, if we are short or if the budget or the actual receipts come in lower than the estimates that they have already paid us, they will allocate that back. They're still going to take it back. It's not a gift by any means, but they will just take it back as a share of the future payments. So some reassurance on that hopefully their estimates, we're relatively new still to local option sales tax. We've only ever had a true up that they had excess collections than what we received. But if we were in that other scenario of the 1% was less than what we received, or opposite, we would not have to just write them a check back. So that's good news for us too. But they do pay it less than what their estimate is. It's paid at 90% of what the state's estimate is.
Nikki, what impact, if any, that you know of now, will it have on the budget if we receive any of the CARES money or any disaster relief funds? Aren't we going to be in line to receive some type of assistance and through those acts? And how will that impact the budget? I don't think it would impact our CIP budget, but
yeah,
are you anticipating a check someday for a certain amount?
Well, the FEMA money that's coming through the CARES Act. So as a government, we're not eligible for any of the PPP loans and such that you're talking about or that you've heard about, perhaps pay loan protection stuff. Governments are not allowed to have that. So we won't have any impact from any of those pieces. We did receive some CARES money. Jerry got $22,000, some small amount that was related to providing ambulance service. It was based on the number of calls that we had. That's what came before you in council a couple of meetings ago, maybe just one meeting ago, for the iPad-like thermometers that were going to be in the buildings. So those funds were used for that. So that's been pretty minor. There is federal funding that we could apply for the cost of supplies and stuff, the masks and things. We've just not had a ton of impact related to that. So ours is, it's $30,000 or so. And honestly, the FEMA money is not worth it would be 2 years from now to apply for it. So we're at this point have not incurred enough costs that we won't be getting any CARES funding from the first rounds that have come out. Now, last week, we did get notice in the Iowa League, if anybody subscribes to that newsletter, the Iowa COVID-19 Local Government Relief Fund that Governor Reynolds, the message was she allocated $125 million for local governments for direct expenses incurred related to COVID-19. So for that one, we did get clarification. There's supposed to be another memo or clarification coming out related to this. Our understanding, and John Conyer had reached out to the Iowa League to confirm, the city finance directors had gotten word that it's going to just assume 25% of our payroll costs for our public safety employees, so police and fire, that we could automatically take 25% of their payroll costs for regular hours. But you do have to go through and apply for FEMA, because overtime would be the FEMA, but ours is all regular time for those pieces. So we're working through that process now. You'll see that on your council agenda. I believe this next time, we're hoping that this memo of clarification comes out, but it's for all costs. We can claim that starting March 1st through December 31st of 2020. And that represents right at $1 million for the city. And if assuming we can use it for regular payroll costs that are part of the normal budget, there's a whole list of other things. But those types of costs for us have just not been that significant. So, but we will definitely go for it. I mean, if the governor's handing out $1 million, our number was $1,054,000, I believe. Yeah, $1,054,000. It's purely split based on population. So that was our cut of that $125 million. So I believe that we'll have some funding coming from that. So that will be a nice offset. The area that we are kind of in limbo on, I guess, is to make sure that property taxes, our first big property tax payment comes in October. Majority of our citizenry escrows their property taxes as part of their mortgage, based on what we received in April after this already started. Most of their escrows had, because there was a delay in when you had to pay your property taxes, and we didn't see any impact from that. So we're under the assumption that most citizens do escrow or had already paid it or will not have an issue with paying it. So we'll double check that when we receive it in October. The only area that we're really seeing an impact is hotel motel. It has taken a huge hit. Traumatic hit, I would say. And then we're also watching road use. It's low for this month, coming in, obviously, because people were not driving. They were working from home in the last quarter. So we'll continue to probably see an impact on that, and gas prices are so cheap right now. So road use is the main area. Hotel motel, obviously, we don't pay any expenses, people, no operating stuff. That's the only outflow of that is what we pay out to the other Bravo, CVB, and the few projects that we approve through the hotel motel funding applications that you all remember here. They all come and ask for the funds, that process, which was, we only gave out $40,000. So that will be able to be funded. But Bravo and CVB, they get a direct portion of what we receive. So those entities are going to hurt, because our number, we brought in right at $100,000 where we would normally be $400,000 last quarter. So I'm anticipating the September receipt will be not much more than that, if any. So hotel motel will be our biggest impact, but general fund should be fine because it's property tax driven, and majority of homeowners are escrowing those. So they've not chosen to defer and not pay those. So we'll know more in October. Sorry, that was a really long answer to your short question.
Oh, that's good. Thank you, Nikki. There are a lot of moving parts to everything, so we need to keep tabs on everything. So.
There is. We're doing our best to just try to stay on top of what's coming, controlling what we can. We've delayed, our saving grace would be that we do have an equipment replacement fund that we can always defer replacing equipment, big purchases like that. So the road use being the one that is most vulnerable to varying revenue sources. So we do have some, options for us to look at if we really did have an impact, but we'll know more here in October as those revenues continue to come in. And obviously having Parks and Rec and such effectively turned off right now, those revenues are non-existent, but so are their expenses. I mean, the expenses of not having the instructors and stuff like that, there's an offset to those, the in and the out are balanced on that one. So
do we have any estimate on the impact of the storm right now? Or?
I have not seen any numbers yet. I believe they're still doing, I know Dave McKay's crew in Public Works will have the most cost related to that for the pickup, hauling costs, but I don't believe from a city perspective, other than tree cleanup and stuff, those costs are just starting to come in as far as cleaning up, and we'll end up having to probably grind, debris and stuff like that. I don't know. I assume that Dave is on. I don't know if you've
Yeah,
gotten anything, Dave, on that.
I am on, and I think by the end of the week, we could get maybe a better estimate as far as how much crew time and equipment costs we have out there. And then you're right, the chipping costs will be the last. We'll probably have to have a big tub grinder in for at least a week to get through that debris.
You guys are doing a great job, Dave. I know it's a huge job. I think, as I said on the first time I went out, I know this is far more widespread than we've ever probably seen in a long, long time. Maybe you'd seen it as bad or worse than this, but I can't remember being this widespread across the city. So kudos to your guys for doing what they're doing. So
yeah, I've seen worse with the ice storm in the past, but it's been localized versus this is so, every area, so yeah.
Yep.
I'll let the crew know.
Okay, appreciate it.
Dave, is the public works staff for Urbandale exclusively doing the pickup? I know my mom had DOT crews cleaning up her neighborhood yesterday. I didn't know if we were getting any sort of assistance. Iowa City was probably harder hit than we were, but
No,
just wondering.
Basically, it's our crews that are in the community. So I'm not aware of any other outside agencies coming in.
Well, good work.
And every municipality in the area is pretty well tapped too, Dave, aren't they? I mean,
yeah.
At first when I was looking around, I thought, well, maybe we can. There might be some slack, and other cities didn't get as hard, but it looks like we just about all took it about as bad as anybody else in the area too.
Yeah, in the metro, we're all about the same, and I think we're considered lucky when you look at the east side of the state.
Yep. Okay. So with that, anything further than on the CIP?
I think we're good, Mr. Mayor. I think, again, particularly for the new council members, we wanted to, again, provide that overview. It's this time of year is what we typically do, and we will prepare and proceed as we've outlined. If you've any particular questions or issues, please give myself or Nikki a call or an email. We'll be happy to address those. And I know, speaking with you earlier, you're going to be reviewing the makeup of the CIP committee, and will let us know that in the near future.
Yes. Yep.
All right.
All right. Thank you. So then we'll move on to item 3.2, and that's the swimming pool future operational planning.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, thank you, members of council. Earlier, we have a communication going around. We had a fairly extensive discussion previously with the council. Am I echoes?
Just make sure everybody's muted, please, because we're getting feedback from somebody. So everybody can make sure they're muted.
Okay, we'll give that another run. Previously, when they had the council discussion concerning the future of our swimming pool, it was decided by council that you weren't prepared to close the pool. And then the discussion turned about operationally. And with the follow-up email exchange, it was determined that operationally that we will be closed through the end of the calendar year. And toward the end of that this calendar year, we'll have to reassess the situation based on the current public health issues that may or may not still be with us concerning how we could or not reopen, what we could to do to reopen, under what terms and conditions, under what circumstances. And so today's conversation was more of a confirmation of that. And then also Jan can give you, Jan's on the line, give an overview of what we've done, making connections with outside organizations to account for the programs that we're no longer providing. And then I know there was a question earlier that was posed to me about in March of this year, we had in our work plan that we were going to begin a process of not self-evaluation, but community evaluation about where the community may want to go with any type of new facility, what that new facility may look like, and begin to develop time frame, action plans, if you will, to bring that forward to our community for review. Obviously, COVID put a huge dent in that, and then also accompanying issues associated with the economy certainly changed that whole perspective, or at least from a staff perspective, we believe that that's going to be a significant issue moving forward. But nonetheless, it's still out there, and Jan can touch on that. But more than anything, we want to just do again a confirmation that we will be closed through the end of the calendar year operationally, and that we will assess it toward the end of the year to see where we're at and what it will take for us to get going up again. I know that during that conversation originally, there was at least several comments from council members that they wouldn't be surprised operationally, given the situation with the infection rate and other issues, that we would be closed for a number of months into 2021. And that may well take place, but at the time, we will always try to continue to look ahead as best we can to make a determination where we are operationally, and again, how long it would take us to get geared back up, from even a physical standpoint. And I've joked with the council, and Jan and I've talked about this. When we push the proverbial button to start the pool again, will it start up again? Will there not be mechanical issues, physical issues with the power plant there that says we have other issues we have to address? Something doesn't work. It's been sitting dormant for several months. That led to another problem that we're not aware of, and we'll have to address those as they come up. But at this point, Mr. Mayor, I'd just like to turn over to Jan so she can give a quick operational, like where we've been so far, but more importantly, other activities or opportunities that we've negotiated with providers to cover that gap until such time that we are open again, or that there is a final determination on the fate of the pool.
Well, thank you,
Sounds
AJ.
good.
Thank you, AJ. As AJ had mentioned, we just wanted to confirm, I think it was implied and through emails that AJ has communicated with you, but to formally acknowledge that we have communicated that to staff, that the pool is suspended operations and at least through the end of the calendar year, and then we'll reevaluate. In the interim, in middle of July, as you know, that we have the initial agreement with Goldfish Swim School in regards to swim lessons. At your next council meeting next week, we'll be presenting a proposed partnership with the YMCA for swim lessons and aqua fitness classes. And we also, Goldfish has been in discussions with us, and they are open to providing water fitness classes at their facility as well. So we do have some options that we will be presenting to you next week as we continue to look for opportunities for our patrons. And I've had a few of them reach out to me of we understand the council voted to keep the pool open, but it's suspended through the end of the year. You've been talking about partnerships. What are those going to be? We want to have other options. So like I had mentioned, we'll present that information to you next Tuesday for your consideration, and then we can move forward with that for our patrons in the interim. So that stage of the discussion, I certainly be happy to answer any questions that you have on that at this time.
All right. Thanks, Jan. Any questions?
And then AJ, perhaps you and I had talked about, and again, what I'm understanding in regards to the agenda, and certainly Mr. Mayor and Council pushed me in the right direction here, but I think there was an interest of what is that next step whenever the timing is appropriate. Where are we at with discussions, or even the like we had talked about in March, we were ready to present some ideas and move forward with what a new facility could be or what that process would be. So I certainly can share with you kind of where we were at, what steps we were anticipating, if that's what you're looking for today.
I think, yeah, Jan, why don't you do that? I talked to AJ a little bit this morning about that. I think we were, again, working on a timeline pre-COVID, and then as many things have happened. COVID has disrupted the timeline on that, but if you could maybe just summarize where you are, and then AJ and I discussed that we need to find a process moving forward to get this back on track. Don't know exactly what it's going to look like, but let's talk about where you are so far.
Yeah, certainly. And as you know, and again, there's new council members this year, but in the CIP, it was approved for us to perform a scientifically valid survey of the community, and then to do a recreation needs assessment. And as staff in probably 6 or 9 months process, we had talked about of what we're visualizing essentially is, again, important to do that random sample survey. And I've mentioned it to you before, but I'm going to mention it again in regards to why a scientifically valid survey and not surveying the community. As you're fully aware, we've had a lot of community input regarding future aquatics, and through our aquatic feasibility study in 2016, and then in 2018, significant amount again for our recreation or parks, recreation, open space master plan. So in that master plan, as well as in the aquatic feasibility study, both of those consultants said, okay, next step would be a scientifically valid survey. And the reason for that is you take, if it's 400, 600, whatever number that is decided on, a sample survey of the community. So essentially, if you're now going, if you were wanting to go out and get more public input, whatever user group that most wants something could fill the ballot box, as they say, by a random sample survey. They do it by geographic, economic, if you have kids or not, all of those entities that we can dictate what they would be. And with that, we would then survey them. Running parallel with that, what are we going to survey them? That's where that recreation needs assessment, and essentially what we had put together a draft of an RFP where what would a building and the elements of that building, proposed new facility, look like? Facility or facilities? Now, myself and staff saying, we've taken a lot of public input. So, Mr. Mayor, you had put together a subcommittee, and with that subcommittee of 2 commission members, 2 council members, we're at the stage of saying, okay, we need to decide and put forth to the public, here's what the facility or facilities would look like in these locations. Through there were top 4 in the master plan, and that is indoor aquatics, outdoor aquatics, a full-blown community center, and or a senior recreation facility. We can't possibly get the capital costs, operational costs, and the impact on residents' taxes for all 4 of those. So staff's opinion as we go forward, and again, can be a discussion with you as a council or on the subcommittee, is narrowing it down. We've taken input, aquatic feasibility, we've taken input on the master plan. Here's what we're proposing, community. Then the consultant can, essentially, we need to get to the stage to go to a bond referendum. We need a sketch so the residents know this is what the facility would look like, the location, and then working with Nikki and finance, this would be the impact on your taxes. So that's kind of where we're at of moving forward. And certainly timing is we want to, as everybody I think is full in agreement, we want to have the best possible chance of passing a bond referendum if a decision's made to move forward with a bond referendum. And certainly the economic climate and COVID and everything has an impact on that. So that's kind of where we're at right now in regards to what's a final decision on what facility could look like and how we move forward with that.
And Jan, if I also recall, one of the directives from council was for staff to investigate partners, regional partners.
Correct.
Certainly things have changed in the last couple of years. At one time, I think you had some conversation with Waukee or Grimes that perhaps this could be a regional effort. And just wondering, obviously that's been derailed in the last several months, but I do believe that we were going to ask for some type of a report on the temperature of our regional metro partners if they want to join in on this particular project and where we are with that.
Yep, certainly that is the intent and part of this RFP as well, that it would be one of the main of the components or the scope of the project of what the consultant would be putting together. And certainly that that has been very clear from council for many years now of what that partnership would look like. And that's where we had talked about I think you need to know what the facility is you're proposing before you can have a discussion. If somebody came to me as a park and rec director in Urbandale, will you partner? What are we partnering with? So I think all of those certainly need to run parallel before we come to the culmination of, all right, this is what it's going to look like. This is what it's going to cost. Here's our partner, and then ready to go to bond referendum. But certainly a great point, and that is the intent of this process.
Okay.
Jen,
Further comments?
there's been some discussion if we're going to do a formal survey, if possible, I would like it to include locating at least part of this in part of a downtown Urbandale revitalization, either the entire project or part of it. I would be interested to see if that picks up more support than having it on the west side.
AJ, I've got a question for you. Having been involved in this discussion for a number of years and also having led the Citizens Committee for the fire station, I'm wondering, we partnered significantly with Clive on the fire station. I mean, we own the facility, but they give us a significant amount of money to help operate it. And how does those discussions start? Because I feel like, we have over the years, Bob has talked to the mayors and Jan's talked to the parks directors, but like, when can you actually start making like actual commitments between communities? And so I guess I'm bringing up the fire station because I'm wondering how that happened, the chicken or the egg, or just what exactly the process is, because that seems to be where a lot, the previous councils have talked about wanting to partner, but it's never, obviously we haven't done anything to move it forward, but those discussions are like, oh, well, that might be nice. And that's about how we leave it. How do you get it to move to the next, like, real step if, say, Waukee or Grimes were interested?
The question's a great one because Jan's already hit on it to a certain extent, is that when we have something to demonstrate what that may be, just anecdotally, the last conversation I had with the city administrator in Waukee was that they still had an interest in something. And defining what that something is always, we've kind of stopped there, is that when we make up our mind, and if there's something that they see fits their needs as well, and it get back to Councilmember Pogge's point about where this thing, if we're going to incorporate it into our survey, location-related issues, certainly a partner who has more of a west side interest, i.e. Waukee, would more likely be interested in something that had a greater availability of their residents to use it, and then that would help to further that discussion. But I think we have to have a product. What is it we want them to be a partner with? And Jan laid out there's a variety of different options for us to look at. But those conversations have taken place, as you mentioned, reasonably casually. Is that a comment that I've made, or maybe the mayor made, maybe Jan's made to our counterparts, is that, at some point we're thinking about this, and it possibly could be located here. If that were to fall into play, would you be interested? And then it builds from there. The fire station example, and I know Jerry was very intimate on this one as well. we had always identified as a community a need at some point in time for a number 3 station. During the discussion on CIP, that discussion got accelerated by the CIP committee. And then with our operational relationship that we had with Clive, then it became an easier discussion to have with them. We are going to build something in this location. We believe it has value to you. And then you combine that with the closest unit response discussions that were ongoing at the time, the existing training opportunities that we have cultivated with our facility and Clive being part of it. That was a natural flow of, we're going to do this. We think maybe there's an opportunity for you to fit into this because you as a community will benefit. And then those discussions took forward from there. And then it was shaped and reshaped. And finally, the final product, which came to you in a 28E. I would expect the same type of process to be in place when we looked at some type of recreation-based facility, and whether it had a pool or a recreation or a senior component to it, whatever it looks like in the end, I think that is what we then take and look at those potential partners. And you mentioned Waukee and Grimes. Does this have interest? And then that will help spur a more refined discussion about to what level are you willing to look at this? Based on the fire station model, my initial inclination would be that if the community wants to do this, like the fire station, that we would have ownership of it. It would go through a bond referendum in our community, and then we would have side agreement or 28 agreement for some operational consideration, usage consideration with other partners that would help to underwrite the operational expenses. Because in the end, if you have to, and I think the cities of Johnson and Grimes at one point did a bond issue where they both had to pass it for their pool project to go forward. One community passed it, one didn't, and the project died out. And I'm kind of old-fashioned in the sense, if you're going to build it and it's going to be in our community, we might as well have control over the bond issue in the sense that it's ours, we own it, it's in our property, it's brick and mortar here. You work from the operational end to minimize any subsidy and to expand its usage base. So a very long answer to your question, but I think based on what Jan said, we have to have something to show somebody, and that's the next step that Jan was getting to. We have to have we have to come to determination as a community what it is you guys want to build, what it is you want to consider on a ballot. And then I have something to go out, or the mayor has something, or Jan has something more definitive that we can sell and say who has interest. But I will tell you again, long answer to your short question, there is still interest from the city of Waukee. To what degree, I don't know. We've also, Jan and I had a conversation with the Waukee School Board and with the school and superintendent, pardon me. And I think there might, and I emphasize might, be some interest from them, although I think more of it, they want to do something and that might prompt the city of Waukee to have a greater interest in something that we would do versus the school. So a lot of moving parts. Sorry for the long answer.
Again, that outlines where we are, and we need to kind of get a little more meat on the bones on our end first, and then take that out and shop it around a little bit, I guess is where we are. So. All right. Any further discussion or comments on that?
But just curiosity, and I may have missed it, I apologize. So what is now the proposed time? So we have the survey as kind of the next step from what I'm understanding. What is the timeline for rolling that out? Just, and maybe I missed it and I apologize.
Again, I don't know if it's me weighing in here. I can give the Park and Rec director's opinion again too of I think of when you start asking community members what if it's the survey, we need to have hired a consultant to give you sketches and costs and so forth. So we need to know what those facilities would be. Once, in my opinion, again, once you start asking those questions, I would hope or anticipate it's close behind with a bond referendum, because people will start getting excited. And again, I think it's the economic climate will determine that of when makes the most sense to move forward with that. Because when you hire the consultant to start getting these preliminary design sketches, again, we're not getting final, essentially a little bit more than a drawing on a bar napkin, but just so people can visualize what it will be. But in my opinion, it would be based on the economic climate so we can be the best chance of success.
I would also chime in, Councilmember Blake, that the conversations we've had internally, and again, the final determination obviously rests with council, but the conversations we've had internally, as Jan mentioned, there are some operational issues, the procedural, who we hire, designs, those type of things, but the climate itself. And, we look at, to a certain degree, some uncertainties surrounding the startup of a variety of school districts. We have some economic uncertainties, or at least some resettling in and reality settling in. We have a political climate that is going to be taking front and center for the next several months. And so it would appear, at least internally, that if you want to optimize that environment, that you may be looking at early 21 before that starts falling together. You could select a consultant now and get some of that easier stuff out of the way, but some of the heavy lift would probably start in 21.
Thank you. I was just curious what we need to do now, just to get the ball moving. Yes, I personally would agree with you that any major approach to this to the community would have to be in 2021. Frankly, post-COVID would probably be ideal, but who knows when that ends. But that's just my sense.
Yep. So, as well.
Mr. Mayor, I think the next thing we can do is I'll talk with Jan, and we'll put out a proposed calendar of some activities. And that certainly can be a starting point from just based on our conversation today about where we, at least from a staff perspective, what we think is a realistic opportunities and next logical steps to take versus just the verbal presentation we've made today.
Okay, very good. All right, moving on then, I think unless there's something else, moving on to item 3.3, which is the COVID-19 operational overview update. AJ?
Oh, okay. We're always talking about COVID, it seems like. So it's taken over our lives. Earlier, we made a decision that we would keep the city hall closed and the boards and commissions and council meetings via our WebEx platform. And that was through the month of August. We monitor the COVID-related information that comes out from the Polk County Emergency Management Group, as well as the governor's office that's publicized each day. Those numbers I wouldn't want to bet on them. They seem to go up and down, and sometimes they're steady, and sometimes there's just a lot of moving parts. And so what we have kind of seen in general is that we were always looking for that peak and that continual movement downward with reported positive cases. From a staff perspective, we're not seeing that as, to raise our level of comfort that we're starting to see some normalcy. We also examined internally, we kind of have our own little survey, if you will, is that I've got a number of directors and their employees who have children who are going to probably 6 to 7 different school districts throughout the metro area when classes do resume in whatever format they will resume. And so there was the discussion about what happens when classes resume, and let's assume that there is some type of in-person, and how that affects, how that spreads back into the population if there is a contamination. You have the colleges that are going back, and what happens and what impact that may or may not have on Polk County numbers. Again, all those moving parts. And so we would like to suggest that operationally, we keep our doors closed through the month of September, and that our formatting for meetings still remain the same. Yesterday, there was coincidentally a survey by city managers as to what people were doing. Des Moines has been it's been more advertised that they are closed through the end of September and will beginning to hold their meetings again in a hybrid fashion. And I'll share with you in a later email what their hybrid fashion is, but they're going to start October. Our neighbors to the west, Waukee, they're in no hurry to begin in-person meetings again and open up their city hall. They had no particular date in mind. As with my discussions with Clive and with Johnston, West Des Moines now has kind of a hybrid model they've been using, but it's not totally in or out. It's more of a hybrid that they will have some meetings where council members are present, others are on a WebEx platform, or physically are separated in their city hall in other rooms. So again, there's a lot of different ways to do that, but from a staff perspective, we are at the end of the month, and we were looking more of a confirmation that we would recommend that we would stay closed through September, and then look to and plan to have either a complete reopening or some type of hybrid reopening opportunity come October 1st. And that gets us through at least September, which for some council members and for many of our staff, that gets them through at least the chaos of the school year beginning, however that school year looks.
I guess, AJ, this is Adam. And question on the meeting hybrid type. Is that kind of where the council may be at a common location, but all public and staff are WebExed?
I'll have to take a look at what other people have done, but I think it can be a variety of things. You could have, in our situation, you could have 2 council members in the chamber, maybe 2 council members in the large conference room, some staff online, some present, practicing social distancing, however it might work within the building. And it really becomes a preference of council, because I believe we still have quite a bit of latitude given from the governor's office about how we structure our meetings and how we make it available to the public. So I just mentioned that because it kind of struck me based on the survey I saw yesterday about what other people were doing. And so that really is something we could craft that would fit us here as to what may work best or what people are still comfortable with.
Yeah, and I guess the little bit behind it is I think we do miss a lot of discussion by being in separate areas as a council. And other boards and commissions, I'm sure, have the same issue. And so if there's a way where basically the council and the mayor could be a common area, whether that's really spread out among the chambers. I mean, I don't think we have to all be sitting up front by any means, but have that discussion be available with staff weighing in outside. I don't know how that looks, but as far as keeping the building closed, I agree on that. It's just how do we get more informal discussion happening among the council, I think is important.
Again, the comfort level of all of you, we had the one council meeting in chambers before, again, we made other adjustments. So I think we have established a physical environment that enhances the safety, hopefully the safety for all of you folks participating, the mayor and the 5 council members. The ability to have staff off-site in their offices and participating, providing background information, answering questions, we've already proven that works. We already proven through this process because everybody is spread out into their offices. So that can work. It just is the public component And if the building is closed to the public, and I know the comment was made previously, if the council meets and the building should be open for visitors, we have set up in the council chambers seating that accommodates social distancing. We provide masks, hand sanitizers, everything else. So we can create as safe as environment for the council to have that one-on-one or that group meeting where you're actually in the same room, physically separated as best as possible, and then to accommodate either as many public as you can accommodate in the room, or just to have you folks in a room, everybody else out, we can accommodate that as well.
This is Bridget. I feel like nothing has substantively changed, really. And there really, I personally feel quite strongly that there's really no reason for us to start meeting in person or to open up City Hall. I think we've found a process that works well. I would venture to guess that more people are engaging in our meetings because they don't have to go to City Hall than we normally see in the audience. So I think it's actually probably more helpful to us to get public comment, especially if we're limiting the number of people that can be in City Hall. So I believe that we should continue to meet remotely. Yes, I miss seeing you all in person, but this is how we are right now. I know I will be managing the Montgomery Girls Academy this fall semester. All three of my girls will be doing online instruction from Waukee. So that's going to impact my life and our life a great deal. But I just don't think conditions have substantially changed for us to just start having public meetings because we've been off of them. I mean, we're still having public meetings, but to have them in person and still have everybody in their offices and not have people or very many people in the audience, I think we've got a good system going now. So I say until the numbers have substantially changed, we should just keep going like this.
I spoke to AJ this morning before the meeting, and looking at the calendar, you know, I keep a daily track on the Polk County Health puts out their daily numbers, including a 14-day positivity index. And what's disturbing to me is that you know, there was the reason we took action in late July to keep things closed was in July was that number was trending back up. It trended back up to 9.57%. It started coming down in late July, reached a new low again early August 5. Now that number's trending back up again. In the last, from August 5 to August 17, that number's trended back up another couple points, and that's a disturbing trend line that I'm seeing. So, in discussing with AJ, I said my thought would be, you know, September is still a relatively light month from our schedule. I think we can probably go another month with virtual meetings. I don't like having the virtual meetings. I'd rather be in person with all of you too. But in looking at the data that I'm seeing from Polk County, you know, the positivity index is something that I look at. I think a lot of people look at as far as what is, you know, you can the absolute numbers of positive tests don't really help, but you have to look at that positivity index to really see where we are. And if that's trending up again, that concerns me. So I guess my recommendation would be that we, for the time being, keep, with the exception of Thursday night, we're going to be together Thursday night, but to have virtual meetings through September yet. And then we'll just take a look at it in September and see where we are in late September.
This is Ron, and I've been a big advocate of getting back to in-person meetings. But I think with everybody going back to school and everything else, if nothing else, to be in solidarity with them for take it a month-by-month basis, and September meet remotely, and then decide after that. But I don't have, I think it makes sense to wait at least another month to go through September. And I definitely think we ought to keep City Hall closed during that month, trying to figure out what's going on in Polk County, because I'm not sure anybody really knows. So
Yeah.
That's my 2 cents worth.
Bob, my 2 cents worth is, yeah, I tend to agree with Ron and with Bridget too. I also believe that if it's really not, quote, safe for us to meet in person, what is it that makes Thursday night more safe than the following Tuesday? And I would propose that we either do the WebEx on Thursday or that we postpone the discussion. Why is it Thursday okay for all of us to be present, but we can't be the following Tuesday?
Just a curiosity, we did get from Curtis a revised location, and it says WebEx. Has it changed from Gevent to WebEx already? Just out of curiosity.
I updated the appointment to say council chambers or WebEx because staff is on that list as well. So I'll leave it to AJ to explain further the thought on the venue, but wanted to make sure that was both in there.
Okay.
Yes, members of council, mayor, originally we thought about Giovanetti, given its size and its capability of creating a much more comfortable level when it came to social distancing. But we also kind of, at least I think some of the earlier message was, well, let's check with our technical capabilities about being able to connect the community to that discussion. Because legally you are still a public meeting. And even though the governor's office has given us quite a bit of latitude with some of her proclamations about how those are conducted, they still are public, and we have to create a venue by which the public can at least observe, listen, and if necessary, participate, especially if there's going to be action items. So we changed that venue to City Hall because we're better capable of providing that off-site connection that was referenced earlier, that it's a better place for us to push that information out and to have that connectivity to the audience that may wish to participate versus Giovanetti. So that was the primary reason for that move. As Curtis mentioned, WebEx, again, to create, social distancing has become part of our vocabulary. And so we want to make sure that the staff is away, is that they're in their offices and that they're there to listen, to participate when questions are asked, but they create that distance and that space for safety reasons. Getting back to Councilmember Russell, because of the nature of the meeting, and the importance of that discussion, we had felt all along that would be the exception, that if we created a safe environment for everyone, that it would bring you into a room where you could have that face-to-face discussion, which is obviously, it's a starting point. And based on that, there are going to be more opportunities for discussion, not only among yourselves, but with the community on this very important topic. But again, if there are members of the council that, for your reasons, want to participate WebEx, that option will be available for you.
Yeah, Dave, I'll say it right now. I don't expect anybody. I think when we planned this, we were at a point we thought, well, we could safely gather again, but maybe things are changing again. And I'm certainly not going to require any of you to be here in person. So, I would ask that we all participate. And if anyone feels that they want to participate virtually versus being in person, that's fine. that's why the option's available, and whatever you feel most comfortable with, I would ask you to do. So.
Okay, so to be clear, are we holding it at the chamber or are we going to Giannavetti Center?
We will be in the
chambers.
It'll be in the chambers. The meeting will be convened in the chambers, but also be available via WebEx.
Okay. And then my 2 cents, because I was the only council person when it came to the actual, agree with the plan. I would even recommend that because the additional part of October that is going to be is the flu season as well. I would recommend before we'd even get in, if October is, if we're thinking about it, we would all have to be required to get flu shots as well before we would be in person. But that's just a heads up from my suggestion. That's it.
I would plug in that as council members and employees, you all individually are eligible for a free flu shot here at City Hall or at the fire department. So we have encouraged that in the past because, and Jerry I see is on, we encourage our employees to get the flu shot and that's why we make it available. So none of us want to contaminate each other. And I'm fairly confident that none of you want to contaminate us and none of us want to contaminate you. So we do offer that benefit for you folks.
Do you have any idea when that's going to be held, AJ?
Jerry, I'll defer to you.
I haven't gotten a date yet on when they will be in. So as soon as we get an idea from the pharmaceutical company, we'll let everybody know.
Thanks.
All right. Very good. Any further discussion on that? All right. Well, we are reaching 1 o'clock hour, so I think that was the only further discussion item. Anything further from the council and for the good of the order? I do want to note that, you know, this week marks the 100th anniversary of the final passage of suffrage, and I'm going to put something together with, I need to talk to Derek. Derek, I haven't talked to you yet, but we're going to put something together for this week's message on that. Might send out another mask reminder as well for folks, and always good messages to get out there. So we will put together a video for this week. Now, Derek's not on right now, but I'll get a hold of him.
You took the words out of my mouth, Mayor. I was just going to acknowledge that this week does represent the 100th anniversary of women's right to vote. And I think we can get something together. I've talked to the mayor to acknowledge that significant milestone. Thanks.
Yep, absolutely. Nope, I've heard a lot about it. I was listening to Sunday morning on it, and we were gonna, I think we actually did do a proclamation, but we didn't ever do the final proclamation. I can't remember if I know we were gonna present one, and then again, COVID struck, and we're not able to get that done, but we will get something done. So.
Mr. Mayor, just a suggestion for this one time. I know you love doing the videos. I'm not trying, but would it be maybe a little bit more appropriate to have Bridget do the message, being, you know, a woman? Just, sure. Just throwing that out.
We could certainly work on that. Absolutely.
Okay.
Good point. Good question, or good comment. So, okay. With that, is there anything else for the good of the order? All right. Is there a motion to adjourn?
This is Ron. So moved.
And a second?
Second, Blake.
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right. We are adjourned. Have a good day, everyone. Thank you.
Thanks,
Thank you.
Stay safe.